Welcome. I'm Frank Conkling, and this is the Panda Consulting ArcGIS workshop. And today we're going to look at making manual adjustments in the parcel fabric. Before we move on to that, the sort of talk right now on the slide, you see a QR code that will take you to the Panda Consulting website. On there, you can find out who we are, what we do, why we do it, how we do it, everything. In addition, if you want to go and have us talk about other things, there's a contact form on the website. Go ahead and fill it out and let us know what type of things you want to talk about on these workshops. We'd be more than happy to go and accommodate them as much as we can. So let's start on here. Okay. Before we start, by a weird coincidence, Esri in the land records meetup just earlier this week, 6/13 of this week, had a meetup about parcel alignments. Here's a QR code, get you over to it if you're a member of the land records meetup. If you're not a member, I highly recommend it. If you're involved with the parcel fabric, they have a 2-hour video on here. It talks about everything from aligning parcels and features and geoprocessing tools. And they did a really good job. They did a great job on this. I'm going to try to not duplicate their discussion and topics, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper in here. All right. One more thing. If you're here live, just know that we have a chat window available. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put it over in the chat window. Chris is actually moderating the window, and he will go and interrupt me and let me know if there's some question over there or if there's some comment that I need to pay attention to, because I sometimes get so involved in this. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about. There are some settings that actually have an impact on the way you make edits and changes, and we want to make sure that we understand these settings. They're sort of esoteric. They come over from ArcMap, but we want to make sure we understand them and see what the difference is. Then we're going to talk about some of the adjustment tools, the move tool, the transform, merge points. We're also going to talk about topology and how it really makes a difference on what gets done and how it gets done and why it gets done on here. If we have any time, we might cover a different topic, but right now, this is where we're at. So let's start. All right, this is just a simple project. It's a parcel fabric in here, on here. But let's start talking, first of all, about some of these settings. So in order to go to the settings, we can go to the project tab and go to options. The settings we're talking about are actually located under the editing function. All right, on the editing functions, there's a geometry right here. And with geometry, there's actually two settings on here. One is stretch geometry proportionally when moving a vertex, and stretch geometry proportionally when moving a topology element. Let's look at what happens with both of these. I'm going to check both of these, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm actually going to start editing and actually make a change in here. So let's just go in here and look at a simple polygon in here. Now I have on here, remember I have set on here where it's going to stretch the geometry proportionally when moving a vertex and when moving a topology element. So that when I go in here and I tell it to go and move, let's say move a vertex. Watch what happens when I'm moving this one vertex in here. If I have it set to stretch it proportionally, what it's going to do is it's going to go and take and look at the overall feature that I have set here and make sure that as I move the vertex up, it proportionally changes the size of that object. It increases it and decreases it. So when we're looking at going and making an adjustment to a feature, this may not be the setting we want. because we probably don't want it to go and change the overall. We may only want to go and just look at that one individual vertex in here. So let's go back here to the options and tell it, no, don't do that. Let's look at stretch topology proportionally when moving a topology element on here. And let's see if this has the same component. Let's get off of here. Let's go and select a single line on here. And let's go and right-click and say, move this. Now, when we move this element, what it's going to do, oh, by the way, I need to make sure that whether or not I have editing and topology turned on. I do not have topology turned on. Let's just put this topology on. And let's move this. And let's go and move it. Now, when we're doing this, it's going to move that all proportionally relative to the overall feature. And if you can see, you can actually see the lines where with the parcel topology turned on, it's going to go and stretch those topology elements as I move this individual element inside of here. It's going to stretch them all out. I think that this is what we really want. And I'm moving a line here, but what happens if I just pick a point in here and I decide to go and move that point? As I move that, the topology elements that I have, the lines that are attached to it, the polygon that's attached to it, anything else that's attached to that one element, as I move it, it will proportionally stretch them. If I go back here, and go to my objects again and say, no, don't do that. All right, now when I go in here and look and see, is there a difference here? In this case, it looks like it's not made any real differences. Let's go and see. It stretched everything the same way. So there's a question on what impact does that have when we decide to move it? And we're going to explore that later when we look at merge points. Merge points is going to have an issue. Sometimes we're not quite sure if it's a bug yet or if it's just one of the issues with the settings, but we want to look at that a little bit more. So we want to make sure that we have the correct options set here, whether or not we have both of these set or just one of them set. Not quite sure, but we're going to go and look at that. All right. So be aware that those settings back on the project will make a difference for you. So let's look at the topology settings now. So if we have a topology setting, and there's actually 3 different types of topology settings for the parcel fabric. One is no topology, in which when we go and have a feature selected, anytime we move that feature, it's not going to look to see whether anything else is associated with it or not. It's just going to go and move that one object. If we have no topology and we do a move on here, we have a feature selected, we do a move on the point, you can see nothing stretches. When we say okay, it actually moves that individual point, doesn't move anything else. It looks like we have multiple points here, by the way. But so it moves that one. Let's go and select a line in here. Let's move the line. It moves the line, doesn't stretch anything else in here. So that's no topology. It will not go and make any changes on here. Map topology looks at what's actually turned on for displays and modifies what it can see at the moment. So if I go and turn off my conveyance divisions and turn off my simultaneous conveyances and turn on map topology, when I go into a move on here, it goes and it changes what actually it sees as being connected or topologically integrated with other features that are being displayed at the moment. And when I hit go ahead and save this and commit this, it will go and move it. However, it does not impact other things that are not saved. For example, it doesn't impact the, not displayed. So it doesn't impact any of the conveyance division components on here. Doesn't impact any of the simultaneous conveyance elements on here. Unless it's displayed, map topology will not impact that. All right, so let's go and undo this and get it down to here we go. All right, now we're going to turn on Parcel Fabric, or this is actually the geodatabase topology. This will actually impact everything, whether it's turned on or turned off. All right, so now let's select a line on an edge. I'm going to select that line. We're going to go and move that line. And again, visually, it looks like it's going to go and move that line. It's going to rubber sheet all the topologic elements proportionally to where they are located right now. And when we commit them, we're good. And let's turn on our conveyance division and see what happened with those. Those actually moved, even though they were turned off on here. The simultaneous conveyances, we didn't have anything that was connected to that line, so that didn't move. But be aware that there's a difference depending upon how your topology is set. No topology allows you to go and move an individual feature just by itself, not actually moving anything else on here, but just moving it in and of itself. Map topology only impacts that which is being displayed at the moment, so that you can go and make an adjustment on things that overlay other things without actually impacting those other things. And then finally, the cadastral or the geodatabase topology goes and impacts everything, whether or not it's being displayed, because it's working on a feature class level and looking at everything that's stored in that feature class. All right, let's undo all of this here, and let's go back to just where it was before, and let's look at the move tool on here. I'm going to keep on my geodatabase topology. I'll go in here, and I have the move tool. I want to make sure that we understand how this works. When we go and move something, let's go and give a good example of this. I'm going to go and create a tax line. And maybe that tax line is supposed to be associated and located here. All right. So perhaps it is supposed to be located here. By the way, this is a polyline, so it's one line on here. And I want to go and move it so it connects up to that north line of this individual parcel here. I can take it and go on modify. Now, when I click on move or any of the selection, any of these adjustment components on here, it gives me a yellow. Let's go and turn this off so you can see it a little bit better. It's barely hard to see, but right now I have a selection anchor right there. That selection anchor defines what snaps and when I'm rotating, how it gets rotated. So I'm going to go and take that selection anchor and I'm going to move it over here. And I'm going to use this as a snap to move it down to here. So to move the selection anchor with the move, what I do is I move my cursor over the point that I want it to go to, hold down the control key and click on it. It actually moved the selection anchor here. Now I can, with my anchor set, or excuse me, with my cursor set to that move, I can tell it to move to that position there and move it to that position. So thank you, Chris. We have a question in here. With map topology, what happens if you move a line that's only partially visible? Interesting, because we'll go and do that. Let me finish with this and we'll go ahead and do that and see if we can explore that a little bit more. By the way, those of you that know me know that I'm more of a I'm more of a Socratic teacher. I believe the way Socrates and the philosophy was that in order to learn something, you really need to do it. You can't have somebody else tell you it. You need to actually experience it to do it. Let's do a rotate on here. So if I rotate this, again, rotate, I get the same thing. I get a selection anchor. Let me go and move my cursor over here, hold down Control and click on my selection anchor there. With the rotate tool, you actually have another tool available for you. And this tool is called it's secondary snap anchor. In order to create a secondary snap anchor, I go to wherever I want this snap anchor to be, and I toggle on the S key. And when I hit the S key, it turns this on or it turns it off on here. Let me go and put it on this line. All right, let me go and put that there, toggle the S key, and actually have a snap anchor. Now, when I go to rotate this, all right, when I go to rotate, that snap anchor is going to snap to things. So if I want this to be exactly on that line, what I would do is I would go and select it, move the rotate anchor, the selection anchor, into someplace where I can rotate it around, and then identify a snap position where I want to go and snap it to something. Click on the S key to make sure it's in the right position, and then make sure that I rotate it around to where I want. With the rotate, there's also an A for an angle, but it's rare that you actually would want to use that. I mean, unless you specifically know what that angle is that you want to go and do it. But it is, the A key actually allows you to go and input an angle for the snap. So let's go and snap it. And it's not done until you actually tell it to finish this rotate or finish this move or finish this scaling up or down on here. The scale is one that we don't use often, but it has the same sort of components on here. The difference is there a rotate and a scale? We can, again, scale we don't use very often with this. So let's go and answer the question that we have. Let's say that we have a line that we wish to go and move, and that line doesn't completely appear in our display. All right, let's go. We have that line, and let's go to map topology in here. Excuse me, map topology. And let's select it and do a move on here. The first thing is the move is going to tell us the snap anchor, the selection anchor, and that's going to be at the middle of the overall envelope for this parcel. So to just check and see and make sure that we have it here, I can move this over here and hold down the Control key, and I actually do have a yellow dot there, which actually is the actual selection anchor. So I can go and take this and move it to here and tell it to snap to there, tell it to go ahead and snap. And if I look, it actually has gone, and map topology allowed me to go and snap it to there. Now, if I go and move this now, and I'm going to go in, because it's now connected to a point here, if I use map topology to move this, it will go and move that point. Let's test this. All right, let's move it. Let's just go and put the selection anchor there. And let's zoom in a little bit more. Now, what happens when I go and move this? Say, go ahead and move. What did it do down here? It disconnected. Map topology has to see those individual elements and intersections for it to be able to go and use them. It has to be able to display inside the display extent, the nodes, and the connections back and forth for it to go and use it. So to answer the question in the chat window, in order for it to go and use map topology to go and impact it like that, it has to be in the display. Now be aware that the overall display extent actually extends out beyond what you can see. So it's not just here inside this window. It's actually a little bit larger, but it's defined by the spatial index as much as anything else. Would that move if, in fact, I had not map topology turned on, but if I had display topology? Yeah, I think it would. So let's go in here. Let's go and do the same thing, but change it to display topology. All right, let's zoom in. Let's say move. Let's go and put our move anchor there. Let's go and move it and see what impact that has. And if we move over here and look, oh, it didn't even do it there. So maybe we've seen some limitations. You want to make sure that your topologies are inside your display window on here. All right. So the connections are at least being displayed on here. It doesn't matter whether it's map topology with what it can see or database topology. It has to be within the display windows. Great question. Thank you. All right. So we talked about the move tool, and the move tool, if you're used to using sort of the old ArcMap edit tools, it's very useful. And when you start creating things, creating parcels, non-parcel fabric components, it's also very, very useful to make sure things are moved together. When you're using the parcel fabric, I would recommend you not have to use the move tool because you're trying to get things to fit together. You take a slightly different workflow on here, though. You start at a known point and move it on here. There's other elements on here. So let's look at another non-parcel fabric tool that's useful, in that I'm going to go and create a polygon here. And again, this polygon is just sitting out there in space. It's not part of the parcel fabric, doesn't have points or lines on it, but it's sitting out there. I'm going to use a slightly different tool. I'm going to use a transform tool. Transform tool, all right, allows us to go and create a series of linkages, all right, a series of linkages, and define how the individual vertices or corners move inside of here. So I can tell it that that point actually goes here, and at this point, and I define where that goes on here. So a move tool needs to have 3 vertices for certain types of moves. And there's actually a couple of different moves here. We have an affine transformation, where it goes and requires 3 links. A similarity transformation can be done with just 2 links. And let's look and see what that looks like. It moves this line with that similarity. All right. A similarity 3D, a rubber sheet of the linear will go that way, and it will move the 2 linkages over to where we want it to go. So that's a rubber sheet with a linear. There's also rubber sheet nearest neighbor, or natural neighbor in here, which will do it. Okay, now notice both of those move the corners that have links on them and do not move the other corners on here. So it's just one of those things where you want to think about, if you're going to use this tool. And by the way, the align parcels tool inside the parcel fabric works with a form of this transform tool. It's part of the actual tool. Is it uses the same concept. You move points so that it matches other points on here. Let's go in here. Let's undo all of these. Let's go and delete all the linkages here. All right. Let's go and let's individually select these linkages here and here and delete them on here. Let's take this parcel Let's turn off topology. I don't want it to go and make that, make anything here. Let's just move it out of here a little bit. Let's use the transform tool again, but this time let's put it with 3 different linkages on here. So the transform tool again is, where are we here? Transform. All right, we add the linkages. This one goes here. This one goes here. Excuse me. This one goes here. And this one, let's say, goes here. All right. Again, with an affine transformation, once we have 3, we can get it to go ahead and do that transformation and put it in place where it needs to go. It will go and move those points and those linkages to where we want it to go. Note it did not move this one at all. If we go back here and tell it to do sort of a similarity in 3D, it's close, but it doesn't necessarily go directly to those points on here. Same thing with a rubber sheeting. We can tell it to go and move it. It moves to the points and it doesn't impact this, but it does go and move that. So if you're dealing with simple adjustments, this one is a fairly easy way to go. But so the question is, should you do this with the parcel fabric? And the reality is you probably don't have to, because the align parcels tool, which Esri went and demonstrated the other day, works perfectly to do this. Let's go ahead and make this a parcel. Let's go ahead and select these linkages here. And let's delete this. Let's delete this. Let's go and create a new record. All right. Create a record. Let's go and select this and assign it to this record. All right. Now this is part of a record. Now we can get it so that the parcel fabric actually works, and we can tell it to take and build this current record. Those of you that are not super familiar with the parcel fabric goes and looks at topology and rules that have been put in place to define it and make sure that everything that's missing is created on here, and allows you to go and work a little bit closer with it. So now I can go in here and say, well, maybe let's now move this a little bit closer. Let's move it closer to here. I have topology turned on, by the way. Oh, I do not have topology turned on. Let's turn this off. Let's put topology so it will move not just the parcel, but the lines and the points. Now let's move it. Now when I'm done moving it, it will move. The move failed. Why did the move fail? Interesting. Interesting. All right, let's go in.
You only have the polygon selected. Do you need to select the lines
and points as
well?
Thank you, sir. Let me go and do that. Put it here. I'm going to tell it to move here. All right. So notice in the parcel fabric, what I did is I had the parcel selected. I then, inside of the heads up display, I looked at the options here and I said, select everything that's part of this record. It selected the polygon, selected the lines, selected the points, and move them all as one. Thank you. Thank you. Now I could use some of the parcel fabric tools, like the Align Parcels tool. The Align Parcels tool, all right, all I really have to do is tell it just figure out the parcel, because within the parcel fabric tool, it understands a parcel consists of the polygon and the lines and the points, all part of that record. So I can go ahead and expand the size of my buffer that it's analyzing here. Let's go and make this a little bit more. All right. And I can tell it that I wanted to go and analyze. And remember I said that the Align Parcels tool is has the transform in here. This transform here, this is the links and anchor points. I could tell it to generate links using the points in here to try to figure out where this is going to go and show me a preview. I can tell it to go and do that. It's gone and done it, but it says there's no point located here. There's no point located here. So I'm not going to move those points. I'm not going to move them so they're coincident with the lines. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change my point to edge, saying take this point and snap it to the edge. Take this point and snap that to the edge, and I'll tell it to regenerate it. And it then goes and moves these points to the edge. This is this point here. This is the transform tool. This is the align to features tool. And when I tell it to align, it will go and align everything within that limit. This is a great tool to help you understand where things are aligned and how to align them correctly. I wanted to make sure though we understand what the simpler, less automated tools are, the transform, and we're going to explore now the align features tool a little bit more. Let's get off of this. Okay. Let's go to a couple bookmarks. So align features, another place here. Here. One of the things that we can look at is, and as you covered this really well, is inside of the parcel fabric, there are some tools which allow you to look at how things overlay on top of one another. And they're located over here in the evaluation tools, and under in here, gaps and overlaps, there's a setting where I can tell it to look at the tax parcels and tell me whether or not I have any gaps or overlaps between here. In this case, I do not. I'm trying to think of where I did create some issues here. Oh, it's undone, not saved a bunch of these. All right. So let's go back out here. Look. The Align Features tool. Align Features allows us to go and make sure that things align up correctly on here. All right. So over here, there's a better example here. So on here, we have some examples where perhaps this is supposed to be a straight line running through here. Or let me go and sort of mess this up a little bit and take by the way, let's not have an active record here. Let's go and take this and let us use no topology. And let's go ahead and move this parcel over to here. All right, let's move it. Let's go and activate the record here. And let's go ahead and create and build this record. We'll go and create new lines on here. We can go and delete these old lines and the old points in here. I have a point in there that I can delete. All right, so now I have parcels that I want to go and realign, make sure that it's in alignment on here. And again, there's a couple ways of doing it. by far the easiest way to do this is to go and take this parcel and do an align parcel on here. Align parcel, go in and make sure that you make this big enough that you can see it. The lines and points at which you want to go and do this have to get close. In this case, it might be easier for me rather than going and doing a line parcel because I'm so far out to just go and select everything in here. As you can see, I have two things here that are not part of it. And then go and do a move on here to make it closer in here. I'm going to go and select these two. And I'm going to delete that out. All right, so I have now a parcel. Let's go and take that parcel. Let's do a align features in here. If I go and tell it to try to generate this now, all right, it will go and create linkages that will tell me where it's going to move all of these corners in here. All right, it will go and show me where those corners are going to get moved and which corners it doesn't find any parcel points for to go and move on here. I can tell it in here. Do this. I have 3 linkages. I really want to select that parcel. It wouldn't let me move it until I actually selected a parcel. Now I could actually move it. It will go and preview where this is going to move to and move for me on here. And go and tell it to go ahead and move in. Now, just to make sure that in fact that's on the same one, go ahead and do that. Zoom in here just to verify it. So I was talking about the Align Features tool. Align Features tool is a tool that allows it to go and move and realign elements in here, features in here. And there's a easy way to get to the Align Features tool, which is here. And with Align Features tool, what you do is you actually draw an individual line. You set up a tolerance, you draw a line, and it will go and make sure that it moves all the vertices in the buffer, that tolerance, over to match it. So for example, I could draw a line from here to here and identify that path, and all vertices within there will move over. Be aware that this uses topology to figure out whether everything moves connected to everything else or whether it moves differently. Let's go ahead and realign this and say, go ahead and align this up. The points actually were the same. Let's go and undo that. Let's go and do this alignment again. From here to here. Turn off my topology. Excuse me, I have my topology on here. Turn on and make sure it works correctly. Goes and moves them. Well, when does it not work? For example, I've got to have something that's a little bit more. Let's go and do this. From here to here. Make it not 300. Let's make it 30 in here. In this case, whether this point actually moves and is coincident with it or not, it's dependent upon whether or not topology is turned on here or not turned on here. I've got a better example for this, but let's start with this demonstration here. So if I go and turn off topology, tell it to realign, it moves this moves all of these things that are inside that tolerance perpendicular to the line, the path that you draw. And if you note here, it went and moved this line so that it was perpendicular to the path, and it moved it to here. It moved this line perpendicular to the path and moved it to here, and it moved the point here. That's not what I want to do. So I'm going to undo that again. I'm going to turn on my topology, and then I'm going to go and tell it to go from here to here with topology turned on and see what happens. Now, when I have topology turned on, everything moves connected to everything else. All right. So whether or not you have topology turned on when you are doing align features has an impact on how it moves. When we first started using this tool, there's an instance in which if you use it in a certain way, for example, let me go and do it here, where I have here to here, all right? And when I do it this way with topology turned on, it's going to tell me, it's going to give me an error and say that you would actually be deleting a line on here. Thank you, it did not do that. It probably wasn't the line there because I cleaned this up. Let's do it here. I know there's a line here. So that it would go in and delete this line on here. I can't get it to give me an error now. It's supposed to give me an error that in fact I have map topology turned on. Excuse me, let's turn this on and see if it makes a difference. There it is. If I have map topologies, tell me there's a graph error here that's causing this thing to become empty. In other words, it's going to delete this line. And we would often recommend, let's go ahead and just close that out and make sure, do this without topology, but you want to be careful with that. You may want to go and check and see whether you can do it with a different type of topology, whether or not that will still work on here. In this case, it will not work. If I turn topology off and do this same thing, it will go and delete that, but that point moves. But when I look on here, I actually still have, get rid of this. Let's see what I have here. I have one line here. I have another line here, which is the smaller line. And I have this line here. So I've got all of these different lines in here, and it should have gotten rid of all those in this. All right. Align features. It's got some really nice things to it, but it's also got some issues with it. Here's something that's really interesting with align features. If I go in here, and this is a way that you would use align features. I'm going to go in here with no topology because I want to go and delete things on here. I'm going to go in here to no topology. I'm going to draw, this is the endpoint curve. I'm going to draw an endpoint from here to here, snap it to here. Let's go ahead, take this down to F5. Tell it to go and do that. Notice what happens with this line. This line actually introduces a vertex. It moves the vertex where I intersected the tolerance. It moves that vertex up to where my actual path was. When this, by the way, this where you actually have a point here and then it returns another way. This is commonly called a cusp. And when you have a cusp, what you should do is you should go to the cusp and then return to here and then go and do another cusp again here. You should do this. By the way, I'm then going to go in just select all of the points and lines on those arcs and delete them. And I'm then going to go and rebuild this for here, and it creates and gets rid of densified curves on here. So this is another alternative for removing densified curves. All right. Align features, it's very, very powerful, but the fact of the matter is it has different functions. It works slightly differently depending upon whether or not you have map topology turned on, whether you have geodatabase topology turned on, or whether you have no topology turned on. Just be aware of that. All right. Try it. If it doesn't work one way, your undo is your friend, and it's something that you need to make sure you have and are aware of. So how else could we use map topology, or how else could we use an align features? Let's go in here and do this. Let's say I wanted to straighten this line out. All right. I could start here. I could right click and say go parallel with this line until it intersects here. I could expand this out so that it makes sure that it goes and captures that, and I can tell it to go and change that alignment. What it actually did was it extended this line up to here. It shortened this line and realigned this to that line. It did not change any of the COGO values on any of them. All right. Making adjustments. I have here some other things that we might want to go through. I also just noticed that I've gone and I had undone. I'd gotten rid of a lot of the issues that I had. I actually had not saved any of my changes on here. Let's go in here and look. Let's highlight this and see if we have any gaps or overlaps in here. We do not. Let's create one. All right. Let's create a gap. Let's clear this out. Go here. Create this. Let us turn off topology. Let's go and move this. And let's move it. Let's go in and activate the record for this. Let's go and select on here everything. And let's undo that. And let's delete all the lines associated with this record. Let's go and create new lines. So we have new lines and new points on here. We have a complete parcel that's not aligned correctly anymore. Knowing what we know now, how do we bring this back in? How do we make it fit again? Couple ways. We can use the manual tools. We can do the move. We can do the rotate. We can do the transform, or we can go and use the align parcels in here. Let's go in and do this. So let's go and select this parcel. All right. I don't want to go and move it. Go and select that parcel and go to align again. In this case, we don't have to be this far out. Let's try something smaller. Too small. 15, it looks like it's good in here. It takes, so the with align parcels, you have to have the points that it's going to move to fit within your tolerance. It's going to go and move and adjust the parcel that's selected. Think of this as it's the transform tool. It's going to change what has been selected for the transform tool. We can go ahead and tell it to generate links in here and go from there. Now in here, there's some links that aren't quite right. So let's go and see if we can fix this and say, well, this actually goes over to here on here. And let's interactively delete this link here. Now let's go and try and generate this new one. When we did that, it went and automatically regenerated these. This link is going here. This link is going here. That point is going to snap in here. This is going to snap here. So this is all moving in correctly the way it's supposed to be moved in. Earlier versions of the Align Parcels tool, you had to go and have an anchor point. You don't need an anchor point anymore with this version of the tool. So I can go in here and make my alignment. Tell it to go ahead and align in here. For some reason, it did not do this one. It didn't, I wasn't paying attention with it. How can I fix this in here? I can go in and use my other tools. I can go and take this and undo it and make sure it fits in the correct one. I can go in here and change this. Let's look at a new tool, a different tool. Let's say that this point maybe is supposed to move to here. There's a tool here called Merge Points. Merge Points goes, and when you select multiple points in here, it will tell you what points you have. In this case, when I selected these, I actually have a total of 4 points. And as I select each of those 4 points, it shows me in a preview what this thing is going to look like. In this case, let's go and make it fit up to here. Again, let's go into a merge. We have had some issues with people saying that merge points will actually go and move this polygon similar to the way we did at the beginning when we had our settings and which topology edits got moved, what got moved. You might want to check that setting to make sure that it's correct in there. Merge points. We've kind of been all over today as far as what we can do and how we can do it. And again, Esri did such a great job with alignments that I recognize that there wasn't much in here that had to be readjusted or changed. But I did want to go and sort of go over some of the nuances here. How do you go and make some of these adjustments? What impact does topology have on you when you're making these adjustments and such? Before we finish, do we have any questions in here? Give you one last chance to ask them.
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay. All right. Nothing in the chat. I'll go ahead and close this out and look for you next time. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277, and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.